This legendary helicopter was something more than just a piece of machinery for American soldiers in Vietnam. It became a symbol of hope, salvation, and true brotherhood in arms. It always appeared unexpectedly, but it was what they waited for most of all. At first, it was just a distant rumble. Then the sound grew, seeming to make the very jungle vibrate. And when that helicopter hovered above the treetops, the men below understood. Everything was going to be all right. You could exhale. We are saved. Today we're talking about a legend named the Bell UH-1, but the whole world knows it simply as the Huey. And you're going to find out why it became the main logistical force and symbol of hope for the US Army. The Huey wasn't actually designed exclusively as a rescue aircraft. The engineers at Bell created it as a multi-purpose helicopter, a universal workhorse that could haul cargo, transport troops, and perform auxiliary tasks. But the jungle war, as often happens, quickly set its own harsh priorities and adjusted any peacetime plans. Vietnam is a green hell, an endless sea of jungle where there are no roads in the usual sense, where even trails mostly exist only in the imagination of the locals. Any movement on the ground turned into a deadly lottery. Would you run into an ambush or not? Would you have time to react to a shot from behind the nearest bush? The enemy knew every meter of those jungles. He could resolving into the greenery faster than the infantry could organize a pursuit. In these conditions, the infantry was suffocating without proper supplies, without reinforcements, without the ability to quickly evacuate the wounded. The Huey became that missing link, connecting units scattered throughout the jungle with the literally everything. They called it the workhorse, the flying truck, the air taxi. This helicopter actually had many unofficial names, but the main one was given to it by the soldiers themselves. The nickname Huey itself was born from the early Army designation UH-1, although officially the helicopter was called the Iroquois, after one of the Native American tribes. So, what exactly did this helicopter do in the war? It bridged that gigantic gap that inevitably exists between the base and the front lines when there are no roads and contact with the outside world is limited. Imagine a typical company that's gotten into a heavy firefight deep in the jungle, in an area even the mapping service rarely visited. Ammo is disappearing before their eyes. The water in their canteens ran out that morning. The wounded are crying out, and the medic is torn between them, not knowing who to help first. You can't reach this company by ground, because the enemy is everywhere, and any squad sent out would just get ambushed themselves. And then, cutting through a thick layer of clouds and humid air, a flight of Hueys appears. They can be heard long before they're seen. That sound is sweeter than any music to the guys below. Some machines, which the pilots called slicks, go in to load the wounded, risking being shot down while hovering. Others, armed to the teeth, the hogs, or gunships, approach the enemy positions, hosing the jungle with fire from twin M60 machine guns and unguided rockets. Still others' flies don't get stuck in the branches. This isn't just help. This is salvation, arriving literally from the sky. From a technical standpoint, the Huey was very advanced for its time. It was one of the first helicopters to get a turbine engine. This revolutionary decision gave it the lightness and power unavailable to the old piston engine machines still flying in Korea. But even this modern turbine sometimes struggled against the harsh realities of Vietnam. The tropical heat and extreme humidity created conditions where the air became anything non-essential that could be left. Sometimes it came down to choosing between a crate of ammo and the crew's lives. The choice was always obvious. They took off overloaded, pushing the aircraft to its limits, relying only on their skill and luck. But the main reason everyone loved the Huey, from privates to generals, was medical evacuation, the famous dust-off missions. Before Vietnam, during World War II, a wounded soldier could wait for qualified help for days. They'd be carried on stretchers over mountains and through forests, transferred from one passing vehicle to another, losing precious hours that cost lives. In Korea, evacuation became noticeably faster thanks to helicopters, but it was still slow and incredibly dangerous. The Huey turned this system upside down. It could pick up a wounded man right from the battlefield, literally snatch him from under fire, often while the enemy was shooting at it, and deliver him to a field hospital with surgeons in less than an hour. This was a breakthrough that civilian specialists didn't fully appreciate at first. The numbers and statistics here speak for themselves, louder than any words. During World War II, the mortality rate among the wounded, meaning those who died after reaching medical care, was about 4 to 5%. In Korea, that figure was reduced to about 2.5%. But in Vietnam, thanks to the massive use of the Huey, the mortality rate among the wounded dropped to just 1%. 1%. These families got married, had children, and lived long lives simply because, at the right moment, that familiar rotor sound echoed over the jungle. The Huey didn't just move people from point A to point B. It created an invisible protective dome around every unit, a lifeline that shattered all the enemy's plans. Of course, the Huey wasn't some invulnerable machine from the future. It flew low and relatively slow by jet aircraft standards, making it an ideal target for small arms fire from the ground. It had practically no armor. Thin, paper-like aluminum that could be pierced even by ordinary rifle bullets, let alone heavy machine guns. Pilots sat on their own helmets and body armor, stuffing them underneath, trying to protect the most vulnerable part, themselves. But the machine itself was surprisingly tough. Veterans recalled crews returning to base with holes in the main rotor blades you could stick your hand through, with shattered cockpit windows, with punctured oil tanks. Somehow, the Huey would stay in the air even when, by all laws of physics and aerodynamics, it should have fallen like a stone. It clung to life and carried its passengers on. The scale of this machine's use is still mind-boggling decades later. During the active phase of the war, over 7,000 helicopters of the UH-1 family served in Vietnam. Imagine that armada, that army of rotorcraft, all in the sky at once. And almost half of them, over 3,000, were lost, shot down by enemy fire, crashed in accidents, or written off due to battle damage. Over 2,000 pilots and crew members never returned home from their missions. They knew what they were getting into. Every flight, especially into hot zones, could be their last. But they took off again and again, day after day, because they knew, down there, in that endless green hell, there were guys waiting just for them, guys looking at the sky and listening for the sound of the engine. The Huey could not only evacuate and supply, it could also protect and provide fire support. They hung everything that could be attached to its hardpoints: twin M60 machine guns, pods with unguided rockets, grenade launchers. Gunners would dangle their legs out the open doors and lay down heavy fire on the jungle, clearing landing zones before the infantry went in. This wasn't just a weapon, it was a powerful psychological factor. The enemy, hearing the noise of an approaching chopper and seeing it maneuver into a battle formation, knew something terrifying was about to start. The fire from the air was so intense, it forced the enemy to hit the ground and hide, giving the infantry precious seconds to maneuver. The Huey's role became especially prominent in 1965, in the Ia Drang Valley, the first major battle between regular U.S. Army units and well-trained North Vietnamese forces. It was there, in those bloody fights, that the legend of the air cavalry was born. Hueys ferried troops right into the heart of the battle, into the hottest zones that others were running from. They also, under heavy fire, evacuated the wounded, loading them to a stretcher just to get them out. They also, while being shot at, delivered water and ammunition to surrounded battalions, risking being shot down at any moment. It was then that soldiers finally understood. As long as the helicopters were in the sky, they weren't alone. They were part of something big and strong. And today, when veterans of that distant war close their eyes, they still hear that sound. It's burned into their memory forever. They're taking you out of here. The Huey became more than just a helicopter. It became part of the culture, a symbol of an entire era, the embodiment of technological breakthrough and human courage. In that sound lies the whole truth about war. Dirty, brutal, full of loss and despair, but also a place where true brotherhood, mutual support, and salvation could be found.